Good evening, everybody. We are now live, and you can start the meeting when you are ready.
Guys, can you hear me okay? You can hear me? Okay. Sorry, I'm doing this from my iPhone today. Okay, so all phones are muted right now. And I don't have a full gallery here, so I'm assuming everybody's on. Yes? Okay. So we're ready to begin tonight's City of Gardena regular city council meeting for Tuesday, July 28th, 2020. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor Serta. Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Here.
Councilmember Cascanian.
Present.
Councilmember Francis. Here. And Mayor Serta, I called you, but I didn't know if you heard me.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Let me talk a little louder here. Okay, so before we begin the meeting tonight, we found a slight error here. We accidentally left off the portion of oral communication, but we will have that tonight, and it will be before the first departmental item, number 8. So let me just read this here as a formality here before we move on to the rest of the meeting here. In order to minimize the spread of COVID-19 virus, Governor Newsom has issued an executive order that temporarily suspends the requirements of the Brown Act. Please be advised that the council chambers are closed to the public and that some or all of the Gardena City Council members may attend this meeting telephonically. If you would like to participate in the meeting, you can participate via the following options. 1, view the meeting live on channel 22 or online at youtube.com/City of Gardena, or to participate before the meeting by emailing the Records Management Coordinator at bromero@cityofgardena.org by 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting and write comments in the subject line. Comments will be read into the record comments will be read into the record up to the time limit of 3 minutes. The third option is participate during the meeting via Zoom webinar. So join the Zoom meeting via the internet or via phone conference. The direct URL is https://us0.2web.us/j/88911423174. The phone number is area code 669-900-9128, and the meeting ID number is 889-1142-3174. If you wish to speak live on an agenda item during the meeting, you may use the raise your hand feature during that item that you wish to speak on. For non-agenda items, you will be allowed to speak during oral communication, and you will be allowed to speak when the mayor opens the public hearing members. public hearing. Members of the public wishing to address the City Council will be given 3 minutes to speak. The City of Gardena thanks you in advance for taking all the precautions in preventing the spread of COVID-19 virus. So, at this time, we did not have closed session tonight. We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mayor Pro Tem, will you lead us in the following? We'll have, if I can have a council member slash Reverend Tanaka, please lead us in invocation afterwards.
Yes, Madam Mayor, delighted. Please put your right hand over your heart. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll pray with me. Heavenly Father, we just thank you again for bringing us all together, helping us to make great decisions for our city and for our people. We know that with your guiding hand, that we will get through this and things will get better and there will be a new normal. But Father, just help us tonight as we continue to make great decisions for our city, and that we can just do the best we can. So Father, we just thank you in your son's name. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on the agenda, thank you guys both for leading us here in the Pledge of Allegiance as well as the invocation. We have no present proclamations tonight. Does any member of the council be made to any commissions, committees, councils, or boards at this time? No? Okay. We're going to move on to the consent. But before we move on to that, I just want to remind anybody who's just now tuned in, we mentioned at the very beginning of the meeting that by error, oral communications was omitted from the agenda by accident. So we want to remind let everybody know that you can still participate in the oral communications. If you put your name in there, it will happen right before item number 8 under departmental items. Okay, so with that, I'm assuming everybody's had the opportunity to review over the consent calendar. Madam City Clerk, is there any public wishing to speak on any consent item?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Does any member of the discuss separately on the consent calendar?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Henderson, item 5D4.
Item number 5D. Okay. You have wishes to speak on, address separately? If not, let's like to get a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item 5.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Raise your hand, say something. It's a little hard here.
So moved.
Was there?
Second.
Mayor, I had you as the first. Who's second?
Oh, okay. Tanaka was the second then.
I'll second.
I'm sorry. I'm popping up on my screen here. Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Henderson and a second by Tanaka.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka,
Yes.
Councilmember Kaskanian,
Yes.
Councilmember Francis, Mayor Serta.
Yes. Okay. Excluded consent calendar items, item number 5D4. Mayor Pro Tem, your question in regards to
Yes.
this?
Yes, Mr. City Manager, in regards to the rebid and some of the concerns that the firms had, is this an opportunity for us to maybe solicit to some of the smaller firms and maybe run ads along with Planet Bids, run ads and maybe the Sentinel or the Gardena Valley News or the Wave or something like that? I realize it's a small amount of work, but we want to see if we can maybe get some smaller firms to participate.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for your question. Yes, absolutely. Part of our modification for the rebid would be obviously to send it out again in Planet Bids, but to hopefully capture a smaller, some of the smaller firms that might be interested in bidding on this project. The biggest hurdle really is the prevailing wages that they would have to pay, and so that's pretty much the biggest challenge that some of the smaller firms are facing, and then obviously the bigger firms they feel that this job is too small. When you take into consideration the prevailing wages as well. So there is a challenge on this. It's somewhere in the middle of too small and too big, and we just have to just rebid and hopefully get a better turnout. But we would certainly use other medias as well.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we kind of advertise in other medias and broaden the potential area so we can get some smaller firms to.
We did, Mayor Pro Tem, we did advertise it, the bid in the local newspaper as well.
Okay.
But perhaps we can, see if we can advertise in other smaller newspapers, not just limited to the Breeze.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That was it, Madam Mayor.
That being said, if there are no other questions or comments on that particular item there, can I get a motion to approve item number 5D4?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, made by Anderson and a second by Councilmember Cascanian.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka,
Yes.
Councilmember Cascanian,
Yes.
Councilmember Francis. Yes. Mayor Serta.
Yes. Okay. Next, moving on, let's see, Planning and Environmental Quality Commission. That meeting was canceled July 21st, 2020. Communications. Madam City Clerk, do we have anybody from the public wishing to speak on any on the oral communications?
Muted.
Yes, thank you. No, there is no one wishing to speak. Thank you.
Okay. With that being said, we're going to move on to departmental items. First item up is item number 8A1. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, agenda item 8A1 is approval of blanket purchase orders for fiscal year 2020-2021. A blanket purchase order authorizes the city to buy goods or services with predetermined terms or conditions. Since these vendors either have individual contracts, are piggybacking on state contracts, or providing vital services with the city which the city is mandated to use, it is only necessary for the requisitioner to request one purchase order for the estimated amount of the expenditure for the fiscal year. The blanket purchase order is limited by dollar amount, as approved by council, and the purchasing officer can issue releases for goods or services until the pre-established dollar amount is reached. Per the city's purchasing policy, section 3B, the purchase of goods or services in excess of $30,000 must be authorized by the city council. Therefore, as the estimated budgeted expenditure amount exceeds $30,000, it is requested that city council approve the following blanket purchase orders for fiscal year 2020 and 2021. Financial impact, the general fund is about $2,141,057. G-Trans is $1,391,589. Other funds is $529,680 with a total budgeted expense of $4,062,326. What's required is approve the blanket purchase orders for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Okay. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments on this item?
Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, in regards to the blanket POs, as we know, a lot of the larger firms and blanket POs and piggybacking makes it easier for organizations to procure, but sometimes it doesn't give an opportunity for a lot of the smaller vendors and smaller firms to participate. Can we take an extra step in there to see what we can do to make sure before we go to that blanket PO, and I know we're using Planet Bids, that smaller firms are at least notified of these items or things that we have coming up for bid, so we can make sure everybody has some participation in some of the money that we are expending as a city?
Certainly, Mayor Pro Tem. So the schedule of the companies that are on this blanket POs, they've already gone through obviously the Planet Bids process. They've already been vetted out, and the ones that are didn't go out to bid are your sole source providers. companies that we've used in the past that have existing contracts with us. So the blanket purchase order is essentially just a tool for us to not take as many purchase orders, the tiny purchase orders at a time, giving us, the threshold that we need. And if it exceeds that threshold at any given time, we go back to the city council. But yes, to answer your question, the vetting process has already been taken on all of these. And so anything that needed to be bid was properly bid.
So, okay, that's fine, thank you. And then the next question for that is, the blanket purchase order does not cover change orders. If anybody submits a change order, that still comes to the council, right?
That's absolutely correct. Anything, if we say that, for instance, the Spicer's paper is at 35,000, if you go to 36,000, we'd have to go back to you as a council for a ratification for the $1,000 because it exceeded the amount that we went before you today.
Okay.
Any amount that's on the schedule.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Are there, go ahead, Councilman Francis.
Being new to this process, let me ask, is this business as usual? Is this what we did last year, or is this all the way we always have done this? Blanket order?
Councilmember Francis, that's correct. This is just allows us to bring forth one purchase order per vendor so that it eliminates the need for going back numerous times. For instance, like I said, I used the Spicer's paper as an example. It has a blanket purchase order of 35,000. What happens is, sometimes we'll buy $5,000 and then another 5,000. So instead of going to before you for each additional purchase order, we're just going to give you a blanket PO of 35,000. Anything exceeding that 35,000, we'd have to come back to you again.
How does this help us with our current budget situation in terms of budgeting or making sure that we don't overspend? Well, I know with overspend the change order, but how does this help us conserve our dollars as best as we can? Because we're
It's not a tool to conserve per se. It's a tool to just cut down on paperwork and process. All of these amounts that you see here today has already been pre-approved by you through the budget process. It's already programmed in our current budget. Obviously, if these are not to exceed the dollar amount, obviously if we go below that, then that would be a savings. All we're saying is, I'm going to use the paper contract, 35,000. If so, just use 30,000. Then there's a savings of 5,000. It goes directly back to the general fund balance.
Oh, well, if it was already approved in the budget, then why are we at this particular juncture?
Because there's a process where the purchase order has to be approved again. Anytime you create a purchase order, you'd have to approve anything over $30,000.
Okay, but since it was already, I guess you mentioned, I'm just curious here, it's like this is my first time out.
Yeah.
You said that it was already approved in the budget. So my question is, if it's already approved, then why do we need, reapproving it, or we just approving where we, help me, rescue me, I'm a bit confused.
Yeah. So what you approve, for instance, is a line item in the budget. So a budget is consists of several different line items. For instance, the city will spend $35,000 on paper. Using that again, but we didn't specify who we're going to be ordering the paper from. So that's where the purchase order comes from. So now we're saying we're going to be spending it on Spicer's paper, and we need you to approve the purchase order from Spicer's paper for $35,000. What you initially approved in the budget process was $35,000 on paper, but it doesn't specify who from. And that's where the Planet Bids and the bidding and the vetting of procuring paper products, and in this particular case, we're using Spicer's paper. It could be that we have a contract with Spicer's for, let's say, 3 years, but the contract doesn't matter. We still have to go before you and have the purchase order approved for $35,000 on paper products.
So we're just streamlining the process. Is that it?
We're just bringing the not only the dollar amount, but the companies that we're using before you for approval.
All right. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions?
And just to clarify too, for others, there is oversight on this blanket. So there are people in charge that actually have to look at what's going on and before they sign these checks. Right?
No, correct, Councilmember Tanaka. I've never been a fan of the term blanket purchase order. It's just that that term is used widely in the procurement world in municipal purchasing organizations. So the term blanket it could be misleading, but there's nothing arbitrary about it. There's nothing blanket about it. Everything is and there's oversight on all of these different contracts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tanaka, for hearing my concern.
Okay.
Any questions or comments? With that being said, can I get a motion to approve the blanket purchase order?
I'll move.
Okay, because I don't have a full screen, it looks like it was Councilmember Kaskinen and a second by Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
I think I'm trying to know your voices. Okay, Madam City Clerk, a motion was made by Councilmember Kaskinen and a second by Councilmember Tanaka. Will you call the roll, please?
Thank you. Councilmember Kaskanian,
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Francis,
Yes,
Mayor Serta.
Yes. Next up is item number 8B1, Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, Agenda Item 8B1 is a public hearing for ordinance number 1820, introduction of an ordinance making changes to Title 18 of the Gardena Municipal Code relating to residential development and time extensions for entitlements, and the applicant is the City of Gardena. On May 26, 2020, Council held a public hearing on ordinance number 1820, primarily relating to changes for residential development standards and time extensions for entitlements. The City Council referred the item to a study session for further consideration to be held on June 18, 2020. During the study session, Council directed staff to include a minimum unit size as there was concern about eliminating the size requirement altogether. On July 7, 2020, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the revisions to ordinance number 1820 and recommended that City Council approve the ordinance, including reducing the minimum dwelling unit sizes. The project will not have a significant effect on the environment as it is therefore exempt from from CEQA, pursuant to common sense exemption found in section 15061.b.3 of the CEQA guidelines. There is no financial impact. What's required tonight is conduct a public hearing on the zone code amendment number 2-20, receive testimony from the public, introduce ordinance number 1820 approving the zone code amendment. Staff has prepared a short presentation on the changes, and following the presentation, recommends that the City Council open a public hearing, make changes if needed, and introduce ordinance 1820.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Serta, members of the Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Ray Berrigan. Slide. Thank you. So as you recall, and as City Manager Osorio mentioned, that we did go through some extensive interaction with the Council regarding this project, and so we wanted to just bring back the highlights the points that you asked us to change. Let's go through that in this presentation. Next slide. Next slide, please. So the first area that you wanted us to look at is the minimum square footages for residential unit. The slide in front of you is a comparison of other cities and what their minimum standards are for studios, 1 bedrooms up to 5 bedrooms. And then next slide, please. And as you can see, we also looked at what other cities don't have a minimum requirement for residential units. Next slide. So we did go back to the drawing board and rather than eliminating the minimum sizes altogether, we revised the minimum sizes. As you can see here, for 3 bedrooms or more, the minimum size is 1,000 square feet versus 1,200. For 2 bedrooms, 800 versus 900. For 1 bedroom, 600 versus 750. And for a bachelor or efficiency unit, it went down to 400 versus 450. There's also a provision in the code that that allows affordable housing. When affordable housing units are proposed, they would not be subject to these standards. Next slide. Also, just to, this is really a lot of cleanup in all our documents. The code currently says that, well, it's stated that 100% residential development should not be proposed in the mixed overlay zone. As we discussed in the presentation or in our study session, that we propose that we do allow for 100% residential communities where they are, where it makes sense. So we're go ahead and deleting that language so that we are consistent. Next slide. In addition, we have a again, this is a lot of just cleanup in our current documents. We are still proposing to allow the minimum acreage in the mixed use zone to go from 1 acre minimum to half acre minimum. However, we needed to put this language in again to be consistent with our documents, including the general plan and our zone code. And next slide. And as a recap, these are the topics that we brought up at the study session. Again, it was a pretty lengthy session, and we appreciate your time so that we could create the best zoning ordinance. So it ranges from distance between buildings all the way down to the front yard setback. And as that was also requested by the council, is that the front yard setback be increased from 10 feet to 15 feet, and that is included in this zone code amendment. Next slide. And with that, staff asks that the council conduct a public hearing and introduce ordinance number 1820, making changes to Title 18 zoning of the Gardena Municipal Code relating to residential development and time extensions for entitlements. And that concludes the presentation, and we're here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Muted, Madam Mayor.
Can you hear me? Okay. So at this time, we have a public hearing. Madam City Clerk, do we have anybody from the public wishing to speak on this item? Are you guys hearing me?
Yes, she's muted.
Sorry, we have one member of the public, Wanda Love.
Okay, so at this time, the hearing is now open, and we'll open it up to our first speaker.
Good evening. I wanted to speak on this issue because as much as I understand that our zoning codes need to be updated, again, I want to state that I don't agree with it being piecemeal. The other thing, I agree with some of the changes that you guys talked about, and I was on that call for the study session, but the size of some of the units, and I understand that they're minimum, I think is a bit small. We don't know which direction the world is going to go in after the COVID-19 situation, with so many people being unemployed and losing their homes and places to live. I think those units are kind of really small, tiny, true matchboxes. The other thing that I wanted to speak about is allowing developers to come in, do a presentation of a development, and then midway switch it up. I'm not in agreement with the development on Rosecrans changing from putting a commercial property in the front and then residential in the back. If we put residential housing on the street corner right on Rosecrans, I think that's a huge mistake. We tried that, it didn't work. The residents are complaining about how close the residential doors are on the property on Van Ness. And I think the residents in the north end of town should get more commercial development and not all housing. That's my input on this study session. I don't agree with the study session just being, the information just being gathered from just two developers, and they happen to be two developers that currently developing in the city. I think this information should have been gathered by more than just the two developers that are actually in the process of developing. I wish we can get more information based on what other developers are doing. That's the end of my comment.
Okay, that being said, let me open this up to council members. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Cascadian?
Thank you. Mr. Barragan, a question. Did we ever talk to any developers other than these two developers that Wanda Love mentioned? Did we get any other developers' input regarding these issues? I mean, I'm not sure as far as the sizes. What they think, if it's reasonable or not.
Kenny, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we sent an invitation to all the developers that we worked with over the last 8-9 years. So those that were interested to join us for the roundtable joined us. I also mentioned that the developers also were quite excited that we were able to have these conversations. So they did also enlist their architects that they work with, and a lot of the developers work with the same architects. So they also brought their architects and also their planners for their input as well. So it was.
I mean, as far as the size, they feel comfortable with it, though. I mean, I see that it's not too much, but kind of a little bit smaller than what it is. I mean, maybe the studio is like 400 square foot, like size of a two-car garage.
Councilmember Cascanian?
Yes, I can hear you, Lisa.
Hi. So we did not get any developer input on the size of the units. We were directed to go back and look at what other cities did, which was on the charts, and then come back with a recommendation to the city council. So that was just based on staff analysis. And
again, we reached out to as many people, and they all.
And then Councilmember Tanaka had mentioned at the last meeting, I believe, that his first house was 800 square feet. And while it was a single-family residential, we still were trying to weigh what are appropriate sizes. And if you can have a 800 square foot house for your single family, we felt that the sizes we were putting in were reasonable to go to 1,000 foot from a 3-bedroom. And I think in your agenda packet, I dropped in a floor plan of a house. It happens to be the one right next door to where I live, which is why I knew where to find it. I think it's like 1,003 feet. It's a 3-bedroom house, 2 bath. So we thought that these unit sizes were reasonable, but again, it's what staff has come up with, and it's open, for discussion, but there was not a developer. All the developers are building bigger than this. None of them are building this small, right?
Well, no, I mean, Ms. Kranitz, my, concern is just to get their, ideas, their inputs. Of course, we're going to make that decision. The council make that decision, but we don't want to chase them out of the city either. saying that, oh, this is it, and if it doesn't suit them, they're going to go somewhere else. That's why I was just concerned about it, if we get their inputs or what they think about it, they feel comfortable or not. That's all.
Councilmember Kaskanian, these are just minimums that they could drop to. They can go as big as they want, so it wouldn't deter anybody from developing in the city because they can still develop the size units that they have been, what we've been seeing come through in all the recent developments.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa and Ray.
I'd like to just piggyback a little bit off that question, and this would be for Ray. You mentioned you reached out to developers 8 or 9 years back. Can you give me a rough estimate, maybe how many developers that could be? It doesn't have to be exact. I'm just curious.
Mayor Serta, can you hear me?
Yes.
I apologize. I got disconnected. I just got reconnected. We've, I would say that there's probably about 6, maybe 7 developers over the last 8, 9 years that we've worked with.
Okay.
So, and again, that ranges from KB Home, Malia Homes, Watt Communities, MBK, City Venture, Olson. So various developers that we worked with in the past, and in addition to their architects and also their planners as well that we collaborated with.
Okay. And I just want to be very clear with this. We just reached out for some suggestions. There's nothing that is being tailored around these particular developers, just for clarification.
Exactly. I mean, we wanted their input to craft the best zoning code for our city with their input.
And I guess because of the fact that when I'm looking for an expert in a particular field, I may not be versed in everything. I'll have a little bit slightly better. So if I need to get some information as it relates to this here, it sounds like, but these developers probably are the best ones since we invited so many, for suggestions here. 2 did respond. So these are just suggestions and nothing is being tailored around that. So like Councilmember Kaskanian alluded to earlier, we want to make sure that we're very clear to the public here. Exactly. That was just a suggestion, that's all. Because we're not experts in these fields here, but, we need a little direction because it's not we do every single day. But anyway, are there any other questions? That was just my comment. Are there any other questions, any other council members or comments they have?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I had a question. In the ordinance, I thought I read something about affordability, and in order to offer affordable units, that, see if I can get this right, then the minimum would be, they wouldn't have to meet the minimum requirements, and that the affordable units would have to remain in affordable units for 55 years, or does anybody recall reading that?
That's correct, Cal. Oh, you got, sorry, this is hard when Ray and I aren't in the same room.
You are correct. There's requirements for how long the units need to remain affordable, and so that's all written in and recorded against the property.
How do you define affordable? Because when homes are going for $500,000, how do you define affordable? What is that?
All right, so it's based on the median income and the affordability of those. There's tiers. So there's very low, and moderate units. So if you desire, we can also bring back maybe a presentation at a later meeting that revolves around that information, because things have changed a lot. Yeah. So maybe that's something that we can present to the councils so that there's a better understanding of the affordable topic.
Yeah, because affordable might be a young professional at the not necessarily around the poverty median. So,
Councilmember Francis?
Yeah.
The numbers are set by state statute. The formulas are in the health and safety code as to each income level. And we luckily have an expert in Peter Wallen who can figure out exactly how much, if you're a family of 4 versus a family of 2, what is very low, what is low, what is moderate. And as Ray said, it changes because the median income will change on a regular basis.
Exactly. And my other question is, we have projects that have been approved already and up and sold. How does what we're doing right now, is this a good question? How does what we're doing right now compare to what we've already done? Is it in line with the changes we've already made or were approved before use permits or conditional permits? How does anybody know?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Francis.
Okay, I'm just kind of curious as to how is what the changes that we're making right now in terms of the zoning ordinance, how does that compare to what we've already done, what we've already approved? Does that make sense? I guess.
Right, so we haven't, the council, you're making the motion tonight to adopt the ordinance. So this is our run, the meeting, the study sessions that we had recently, I think it was about a month ago, that was all informative for the council, and also we were getting your feedback so that we could come to you tonight with this ordinance. So we haven't approved anything. This is the first step in the approval process.
No, I'm not asking whether or not we have approved anything, because, for example, the project on Rosecrans and Van Ness, and then there's the one that's gone up. It looks like they're on Redondo Beach in Vermont. Curious to how is what we're approving. We've already done some projects without those zoning ordinance. So how does that compare? That's all I'm curious about. That's all.
Councilmember Francis, as we said before, nothing in this ordinance increases the allowed density on the units. It just kind of shifts around what the developer can build, for example, and the project up at the taxi site, which you saw the video on that last meeting. Well, that's not before you. The change in development standards lets them build what they call the garden court units so that you actually get individual units. They could, as we showed you before, actually push all those units together, eliminate the setback between them, and then put more units on the lot. So I think this is pretty much in line with what has been developed in the past couple of years from our major developers on these larger lots. Again, this is the R4 and the mixed use we're primarily talking about. It just shifts around some of the development standards, allowing them to come up with a better design on their lot. One of the other things we had pointed out was, whereas G3 thinks it's wonderful to do lots of individual patios per unit, Malia Homes wants to do a very large common space area, and their one on 178th, they put in a pool. So different developers want to provide open space in different ways for the markets they're driving to.
Thank you. I wasn't referring to what was already what developers like, what they don't like. I've done some research, and we're pretty much in line with what's going on in other cities. If you ride around and talk to folks in other cities and things that they've already done, in Hawthorne, for example, right next door, it appears to me that the direction that we're heading is not so much out of line with what other folks are doing in other places. That was just my question. That's all. I was just curious. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments at this time? Okay, if not, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. I'm going to ask for a motion. Number one, I'm going to ask to introduce ordinance number 1820.
I'll introduce it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I'm sorry, was that Henderson? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So at this time, Madam City Clerk, ordinance number 1820 was introduced by Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. And we're going to move on to item number 8C1. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, agenda item 8C1 is resolution number 6473, approving the borrowing of funds for fiscal year 2020-2021 pursuant to a revolving line of credit with U.S. Bank National Association. To ensure the city has adequate cash flow to meet recurring obligation and in an effort to be fiscally prudent, the following one-year loan options were procured. First is U.S. Bank National Association for the amount of $9.5 million line of credit. The unused portion is charged 35 basis points, estimated annual interest of $33,250. Any of the portion is utilized, it's charged at the monthly LIBOR rate of 50 basis points plus 125 basis points, total of 1.25% for a total rate of 1.75%, which is the estimated annual interest of $166,250. Legal fees would be approximately $15,000 to $20,000, and the time frame to process the loan and have it in place would be 3 to 4 weeks. Second option was Chase Bank at $9.5 million line of credit. Unused portion is charged 50 basis points with an annualized interest of $47,500. Portion that is utilized is charged a monthly LIBOR rate of 50 basis points plus 1.75%, which equates to about 2.25%. And an annualized interest rate of $213,750 to $237,500. Legal fees would approximately be $45,000, and time frame to process the loan and have it in place would be 3 to 4 weeks as well. Bank of the West and Union Bank, both are currently only considering lines of credits for its current clients. So on June 18, 2020, the Finance Committee approved the recommendation to establish a line of credit with U.S. Bank National Association. I just want to remind the Council that the purpose of this loan is for extreme emergency situations only. We all know we're currently in a pandemic, and we just want to make sure that the city has adequate cash flow. Another catastrophic event will certainly, most certainly, will wipe out the rest of our reserves. As we start the new year, 2020-2021, we've already spent $8 million of our general fund reserves, leaving us with only $8 million left due to the fiscal year 1920 deficit. Reserves will now be at 13% from the council policy of 25%. What's required is approved resolution number 6473, approving the borrowing of funds from U.S. Bank National Association. Fiscal impact is approximately $48,250 up to a maximum of $186,250.
Okay, thank you. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments on this item here?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Kaskanian, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, so I guess the U.S. Bank, they gave us better rate, better terms. And so once we borrow this money, the money is going to be in our bank, our accounts. And every month, how much was that we're going to pay? I just want to make clear to the public so they will understand,
So if we borrow the full $9.5 million and we don't use any portion, they will charge us 35 basis points, that's 0.35%, with an estimated annualized interest of $33,250.
So it's going to cost us approximately $2,800 a month if we don't use the money. We just have money in the bank.
That's right.
I see. So, okay, so, and if we use the money, let's say we borrowed $1 million, for example, and can you give us that breakdown too, so the public would know?
So if you use $1 million, then the rate of that $1 million is 1.75%.
Okay, I see. So approximately $17,000?
Correct.
Something like that. Okay. I just want to clarify, I knew about it, pretty much, but I just want to make sure the public will understand it too as well. What we're going to spend and what if we borrow this much and how much it's going to be. So they will be aware about it. It's their rights to know about this. So.
Right. Councilman Kaskanian, you're correct on the cost of borrowing money. It does cost to have money on hand as reserves. We are getting dangerously close to a low reserve amount. As you know, like I said, we were at $16 million a year ago. COVID-19 wiped out half of that. I mean, that's we're essentially at 13% now. And as you get closer and closer to a lower reserve, the likelihood of anybody letting you borrow later on will be highly unlikely. So if you get down to, let's say, 5% of your reserves, which is about $3-4 million, you basically have no reserve. I mean, that $3 million can wipe you out in one payroll. So this is just a precautionary measure. Again, this is we know we've already done the analysis. We've already made a presentation to the city council and the finance committee. We know that we have a cash flow problem. And this is because it's directly related to COVID-19. When you have an economic engine that's shut down, you have no money coming in. I mean, very little money coming in. And, one of the biggest revenue producers that we have is the casino. As you know, the casinos are shut down currently right now. They were reopened for, Hustler was reopened for a very brief period of time, but then the cases spiked up again, and, the state came down and said, gotta close it. And so we are worried about what happens if this continues longer than we can sustain. And so having a line of credit is a responsible thing to do. And let me tell you something, we're not the only ones doing this. And that's why if we do, the sooner that we do this now, the better, because the money is going to run out. The money allocated to individual cities, counties, and states are going to run out. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just want to make sure, the public are aware about, that we are in a tight budget too. So we're not going to spend the money. So it's, getting,
Right. We will not, this is going to be under our control. We're not going to be spending this unless we absolutely have to. And that's when it gets very dangerously close to, lower than, let's say, 7% reserves. That's about $3 million.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
The city manager, what happens if we do nothing? If we just said, well, let's just kind of see how things turn out, and maybe this virus will go away and the economy will open up again, and what happens? If we just do nothing?
If we do nothing and we don't apply for this line of credit, then we put our hands into essentially a chance, right? A chance that we might come out of this okay, and there's a good chance that we might come out of this okay. But what if we don't? The problem is that there's an inherent issue with the pandemic where we have absolutely no control of when businesses are going to open up. That's one facet of this. The other facet is, what if something else happens? What if there's an earthquake? What if there's there's a lot of what ifs? And this is our recommendation, is to bring it before city council. And the time to borrow money and the time to procure money in this size for a city our size is not when we're running out of money and there's another event that takes place. That's not the time to do that. The time to do that is now. Better be safe than sorry. There's a small amount of money, considering the amount of money that we're borrowing, as far as interest that's being charged. But I think in the long run, this is a safe way to do it. I mean, that's our recommendation, is better be safe than take that chance that something does go wrong and we don't have any money to cover it. The thing that worries me the most is that 1 year wiped out half of our reserves. That's a fact. I mean, that's, we were looking at even, more than that, but we were able to, put some mitigating factors in place to kind of ease up that the 1 year hit. But it's $8 million for a $16 million reserve.
And we've done everything that we could do possibly to make sure that we survive this economic.
We've done everything that we could possibly do with regard to the next couple of years, because on the fiscal year 1920, it's already a done year. There's nothing more that we could have done to save that fiscal year. But as far as the next couple of years, we've done milestones. We've got, I mean, we've done phenomenal changes. And this is in part, actually, in most part, due to our employees coming together and saying, we want to help the city out. And, we instituted layoffs, we instituted furloughs. Let me be completely honest with you. There's some cities out there, and even in the South Bay, that did the waiting game. They did say that, hey, maybe this is going to blow over, this is going to get better. And now they're in a predicament where now they're starting to do their layoffs and furloughs because they know that it's going to be longer than they anticipated. It's not just going to go away.
Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. City Manager, for that report. And hopefully we don't have to dip into this too heavily and everything. As I was reading something that the actual impact of COVID moving forward is not going to be kind of a straight line loss where we lost 8 million in a year. I think it's going to be exponential moving forward the longer our economy stays closed, especially for a city that has tighter margins of error like us. What would this do to our credit rating as we try to put bonds on the open market that passes as well? What does that make us look like as an investment?
It actually does nothing. I mean, it's just like if you think about it on a personal note, when you take out a line of credit but you don't use it, it doesn't really get into your debt load. Only when you start using the funds and when you get to that point, Moody's and S&P are they're going to understand that, hey, this is a pandemic and this is a unusual event, that the credit raters are not going to go out there and start dinging you for, borrowing funds, because we're not going to be the only ones. We are actually probably, percentage-wise, we're in a better situation than most cities. Not very many cities have 25% reserves. Had 25% reserves.
Right. So my next question is in regards to this line of credit on our balance sheet. Will it have a separate line item so we'll know and we can kind of monitor as we expend that, if we expend that, so we know what we're spending that line of credit on? So versus going to utilities, but going to maybe like payroll or something, we know exactly what we're spending that on?
Yes, if we do end up using it, and I do hope and knock on wood that we don't. The object of the game here is just use it as reserves and not actually use it, because if we actually use it, then we know that there's something inherently even worse that's happening. But if we don't use it, and obviously it doesn't make it to the balance sheet. It just it sits into the U.S. Bank line of credit balance, and we don't use it, and it doesn't make it to a balance sheet. If we do use it, then obviously, let's say you use $1 million, it does end up in our liabilities, and it does end up in our balance sheet, and we're obligated by law to monitor that, and our auditors are obligated by law to report on that.
So here's the last question. It's probably like a question on the edge. If we were to grab some of that and put it in an interest earning account, is that allowable to get some other interest to offset that 1.75?
You can, but the only way you'll ever get that return, the excess return, it's called an arbitrage, right? It's the amount that you're earning is higher than what you're borrowing, is to put it in a investment that is longer term, let's say 3 years, but this thing's only for a year, so that wouldn't work out very well. Or is to put it on a stock market, which we're not allowed to do. We're limited on what investments we can actually invest on. We can't invest on risky derivatives, anything like that. That's the only way really that you can hedge this and turn it into an arbitrage. But other than that, I mean, our LAIF rate is going to be similar to LIBOR, and it's designed that way so you don't get arbitrage over your borrowing. So it's not easy money per se. You'd have to actually be risky a little bit to get a little bit of arbitrage.
So last question on that. So in that funding, are we excluded from using it, the purchase of real estate, hard land asset, or anything like that?
No, you can use it wherever you want.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's all I had. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Madam
there-
Mayor?
Yes.
This is City Clerk Semenza. We do have a member of the public who wishes to speak on this item. Wanda Love.
Yes, I'll go out. Go ahead.
Good evening again. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this. So the city is borrowing this $9.5 million to put away in the event that the city runs into a financial situation and we need this money. Is that what I'm understanding from the city manager's explanation? Or is this money being pulled down, borrowed, because there's some financial responsibilities or obligations the city has? And does this have anything to do with the next agenda item, which is the bond measures? Just kind of curious and would like some explanation. If we're borrowing this money because we need it, or we're borrowing this money because the pandemic, the situation that a lot of cities are in, and we just want to stash this cash to the side in case the city runs into a financial debt that we don't have money right now to afford. That's my question.
Okay, thank you. Mr. City Manager, would you like to reiterate again what the money's for?
Yes, Ms. Love, the money is, like I stated, it is for an emergency situation, an extreme emergency situation only. It is not, we're not planning on using it on any, measures or anything like that. As to your question as to how does it relate to the next item, which is the bond, the pension obligation bond. That pension obligation bond is actually designed in counterpart to this line of credit, in the sense that that bond measure is designed to infuse cash to the city. So in the event that we do sell the bonds, then the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, is do away with the line of credit, because we wouldn't need it anymore. So this is not designed to integrate at all in any way, shape, or form with the POB that's coming on the next agenda item. This is really strictly for making sure that we have enough money just in case something else happens.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, the only comment I'd just like to say is I think this is a really great option that we're doing just to cover ourselves, because, as mentioned, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID, and my fear is always an earthquake or something, and, I'd rather, plan for the worst and hope for the best here, and, I just like the fact that, we're able to look further down the line, just to make sure that we can cover all of our bills and be able to continue maintaining. So, I just like to just start thanking the city manager and our finance people just for, going out there and finding these options like this for us, just to help continue putting us in the best situation we can be in, especially during these uncertain times right now. So my hat's off to you guys. Thank you guys for researching that and seeing that and helping keeping us ahead of the game here as best we can be. With that, if there are no more questions or comments, can I get a motion to adopt resolution number 6473?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Councilmember Kaskanian and a second by Councilmember Tanaka. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Kaskanian.
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Francis.
Yes.
Mayor Serta.
Yes. Okay, next up is item number 8C2. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, agenda item 8C2A and B is for resolution number 6474, authorizing the issuance and sale of bonds to refund certain pension obligations of the city, approving the form, and authorizing the execution of a trust agreement authorizing judicial validation proceedings relating to the issuance of such bonds and authorizing actions related thereto. Due to the devastating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, The city's 2020-2021 adopted budget forecasts a structural deficit of $1.8 million. And despite staff reductions and furloughs, the disruption to the city's revenue streams has been catastrophic. Therefore, staff has been exploring solutions to address these budget deficits given the city's finite resources and the evolving nature of an uncertain economy. The issuance of pension obligation bonds will allow the city to prepay up to 100% of the projected unfunded accrued liability, or UAL, based on the most recent valuation report recently released by CalPERS. The lower interest rate paid on the bonds as compared to the current 7% interest rate charged by CalPERS and an estimated 27-year bond repayment schedule, presuming all call provisions are not exercised, the city could potentially achieve budgetary savings between $34.4 to $58.1 million, based on an estimated rate from 3.472 to 5.056 respectively over the life of the bond financing. The resolution being presented to council authorizes staff and bond counsel to submit the necessary documents to the LA County Superior Court to start the judicial validation process, which is the first step in the bond issuance process and takes at least 90 days. This will also set the parameters for the bond, a total bond issuance of $101.49 million and the maximum interest rate of 5.056% that the city is willing to accept. The city, however, is hopeful that an interest rate closer to the current market rate of 3.472 will be procured. The Finance Committee approved the recommendation in regard to the issuance of pension obligation bonds at the July 2020 meeting and directed staff to move forward with steps to gain council approval. Staff respectfully recommends for council to approve resolution number 6474 and authorize the city manager and chief fiscal officer to take all administrative and budgetary actions necessary to perform the bond issuance. Fees are contingent upon issuance of the bonds. What's required tonight is approve resolution number 6474, authorizing the issuance and sale of bonds to refund certain pension obligations of the city. Approve the form and authorizing the execution of a trust agreement, authorize judicial validation proceedings related to the issuance of such bonds and authorize actions related thereto, and authorize the city manager and chief fiscal officer to take all administrative and budgetary actions necessary to perform the bond issuance, including the negotiation and execution of agreements with Quinton Timig LLP for judicial validation proceedings, bond counsel, and disclosure counsel services. K&N Public Finance to act as a municipal advisor, and U.S. Bank National Association to act as trustees. Madam Mayor, we do have our municipal advisor, Mr. Mark Young from K&N. Yes, he's on the line to further clarify, and Mr. Brian Quint, our bond counsel.
Okay, I'm sorry, to clarify, or did he want to add something to this first?
Oh, just to add to the discussion, if there is such discussion or questions regarding to the
Okay, great.
bond.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so at this time here, does any member of the council have any questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Henderson. Well, one thing I'm glad about this option is that it's something that's not going to be on our backs as voters and everything for us to supplement this gap. One question I do have for Mr. Young and Mr. Quint in regards to if this does pass tonight and the bond gets put out on the open market, is it going to be tucked away with other city bonds that are on the open market? And how can we track the activity of our bond and who's buying our bond and everything? Make sure that it's spread across the market. How can we track that bond? Is it going to have a special name, or what do we do exactly?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, Mark, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and this is Mark Young, your municipal advisor. As your municipal advisor, we have a fiduciary responsibility to you to make sure that when your bonds go out, you get the absolutely best price. So, number one, if you approve tonight the resolution, that's going to start a legal process, which is going to be about 60 to 90 days. If you approve tonight, we're going to start a process where we issue an RFP to hire underwriters, investment banking firms, to sell your bonds. So we'll go through a competitive process to select probably 1 to 3 firms to sell the bonds. We're going to ask them to prepare a plan of marketing, distribution, where they're going to sell the bonds, and particularly for Gardena, we want to see that they're going to distribute bonds in the South Bay area. When it comes time to price the bonds, again, as your municipal advisor, your fiduciary, we will go out and we will have comparables. So comparable prices for other securities with your rating, and we will show you 7 to 10 other comparables that are priced within a 3 to 8 week period. And we'll prove to you that the comparable pricing on your bonds is good, relevant, and is exceeding other credits. And I can assure you, as a South Bay city with your demographics, I'm not at all concerned about the demand for the bonds.
Thank you, Ms. Young. So my follow-up to that is in regards to once they get on the open market, we can't really control who buys them. And the reason why I say that is there's some nefarious folks out there. I just want to make sure that they don't try to get their hooks into our city because our bond is out there on the open market and they get the majority of the bond. So it will be dispersed across multiple funds.
Well, again, and this is why you have a municipal advisor, and I have a fiduciary responsibility to the council and to the city manager. We will make sure that you know who every purchaser are. And in fact, there's a platform when your bonds are ready to be sold. It's called iPrio. And you can actually watch real time and you can see every single order that comes in. For every maturity, you can see everybody who's putting orders in. And then, again, as your fiduciary, we insist after your bonds are sold that we bring the city in and that you're part of the process to allocate bonds. So when you see who put orders in, who wants to buy your bonds, and then who we're going to give your bonds to, you have a say in that. And we're one of the most aggressive advisory firms in terms of saying we really think the issuer should be a partner in determining who is going to get our bonds. We don't sit back and say, okay, Wall Street, go ahead and just go give those bonds. We want to know who put orders in and who really wants them, and from an issuer standpoint, who do we want to give bonds to? So the city is going to be actively involved in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Is it Cascadian? Go ahead.
Yes. Question is to Mr. Young. Mr. Young, how are we going to ensure that we're going to get the best deal on our bonds? And the next is, who would buy bonds in these situations like we are in, the pandemic? I mean, are they, market for it at this time? Is it a good time to sell or it's a good time to buy? You know what I mean? I mean, like a real estate, I don't know. Is it a good idea or wise decision that we're making it to sell it now? Or if we buy, we sell it later, so.
Okay, those are really, really good questions. So I will put this kind of in context. I will be selling for Huntington Beach tomorrow, $25 million worth of bonds. The taxable rate, which would be equivalent to what you would be selling your pension obligation bonds, is under 1.5%. They're selling bonds from 1 to around 7 years. On the long end, the tax exempt rate is under 1%. So your first question, is this a good time to be selling bonds or to be borrowing? Absolutely. Number two, for a city that's well managed, and actually the previous action you took to approve a line of credit as an emergency that you're not going to touch, but you just want to have it, that was really, really prudent. That was a smart thing to do, and the rating agencies actually will give you kudos for doing that. So the fact that you're forward-looking, you're thinking about liquidity, and in particular, because you have the card club issues in terms of your revenues, that was a really good step. So kudos to the council for making that decision. In terms of how am I going to assure you're going to get the best rate, my firm is in California, we're number 1, number 2, or number 3 in every category of municipal finance. So we're issuing bonds every week. We're involved. We spend a lot of money on technology. We have Bloomberg, TM3. We have every piece of equipment to see who's borrowing at what rate, at what time. And when it's ready for you to borrow, we will prepare an Excel spreadsheet and show you where your borrowing rates are at relative to the last 20 people who have borrowed over the last 3 to 7, 8 weeks. We're going to show you where you compare. And if our underwriter isn't competitive, we're going to talk to them and say, why isn't Gardena doing better? And we're going to push, but we're going to have comparables in the market. And again, as your fiduciary, that's our job. We have to push to make sure you're getting the best rate. And then ultimately what's going to happen when ready to go to market, there is a platform called iPrio, which we will share with your city manager, your finance director, as well as electeds, if you would like, that real time will show you orders. So we have like a 3 to 4 hour order period, and you'll be able to see every single maturity of bonds. You'll be able to see the orders. You'll be able to see how well your deal is doing. So the transparency is really, really good. And depending upon how well it's going, I mean, if there's a maturity that is $1 million and there's 5 million orders, well, that means the interest rate's going to go down because you have more demand than supply. And you just look over the entire thing. So there's a lot of transparency, and we make it available to the city. But again, when you hire a municipal advisor, you're hiring somebody who's got a fiduciary responsibility. If we don't do our job, ultimately the SEC can come in and sanction us and take our license away. So we take this pretty seriously.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young.
Madam Mayor, I have a couple questions, if I may.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And so, how do you, first of all, is this a short-term strategy or long-term?
Well, one part of this strategy that we've worked with the city manager and others is we're also developing a long-term UAL policy. So as part of, if you proceed to do a pension obligation bond to prepay effectively your 7% mortgage to CalPERS, we are recommending that you adopt a UAL policy, which says you're going to set aside a significant amount of the savings and put it into a trust, a reserve, set aside to deal with future UAL that you know is going to happen. I mean, we already know. Right now, the 1920 returns are 4.75%. So we're already underwater relative to their target. So we know your UAL is going to go up. So we need to have a policy where you set aside some of the savings to go towards future UAL. If the UAL goes up, have a policy on how you will amortize it, hopefully quicker than CalPERS, but a long-term policy to deal with this. This is not a one-time panacea where this is going to solve your UAL. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. This is refinancing your current UAL at 7%, going probably 3.5%. You're going to realize savings. And as a council, you have to allocate where you're going to direct those savings. And we believe you should adopt a formal policy to take a significant amount of that and put it away in a rainy day fund for the future UAL. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. I just have one more. I was reading this article from Pension Investments, and in the article, Fiona Meyer, treasurer, talked about moving CalPERS toward a 7% solution investment strategy based on better access. And essentially, I guess they're looking at allocating more to private equity and private debt using some type of strategy. If they go forward with this, how does that impact what we're doing now?
Okay, fantastic question. So if you go back to the study session, one of the points that I made was the GFOA says they don't like pension obligation bonds. And they don't like pension obligation bonds when an issuer who has their own captive system takes the money, puts them into their own system, and then they have to, day one, earn above what they borrowed at. You, as a city, are taking, if we move forward, you're going to take approximately $100 million, put it into a $350 billion pool. Your $100 million doesn't move the needle at all. It's not going to change the investment decisions. It's not going to change the discount rate assumptions. It's not going to affect the actuarial assumptions regarding your employee base. It's a completely different analysis. It really is like you're refinancing a mortgage at 7% going to 3.5%. If we do nothing, in 2 years, if your UAL goes up 50 million, that would be the same 50 million if you did nothing. So it's all right. This is just refinancing a mortgage with CalPERS. And what we're recommending and kind of insisting as part of this, you adopt a UAL policy that's very stringent, where you take a significant amount of the savings and you dedicate it to a rainy day fund to preserve and help the city in the future when that UAL increases. It's not if, it's when. And it also is going to stabilize, and at least today, instead of having escalating CalPERS UAL payments, we're going to levelize it and give you some budget certainty going forward.
And my last question: how do you determine the amount of the dollar amount of the pension bonds? Is it number you just sort of pull out of your hat, or is there a formula for determining how much money the I guess, am I making sense here? How much?
Yes, and it's a great question. So the resolution that you have tonight has identified your current UAL, your unfunded actuarial liability to CalPERS based on their latest report. So the resolution identified that, and it was a little over $100 million. So the resolution also authorizes a maximum amount of bonds. And that would be the maximum amount if we decided to prepay the entire UAL and pay cost of issuance to issue bonds. We do that because when we go, if you approve, we have to go to court to have the judicial validation. That will give us a 90-day window to come back and decide, well, do we want to refinance 100% or 90 or 80 or something else? Or when we get the new CalPERS report, and Clint can help me out here, I think it's going to come in August. And if that number goes up and it turns out that what we've approved would end up being 90% of our actual UAL, we have plenty of flexibility. So what we're doing tonight is establishing a parameter, but we're not making any decisions in terms of how much we would borrow, how we would amortize it, what we would do. It's just establishing an upper limit so we can start the judicial validation proceedings.
This is my absolute last question. Is there any tax liability to our residents, our taxpayers? If something goes wrong, would they have to bear the burden of paying the money back or anything like that?
Again, a great question, and I love questions. I just want to say, I hate being at council meetings with big decisions and nobody asks questions. So I love the questions. So right now, you have a liability on your books to CalPERS to pay this unfunded actuarial liability. It's considered a soft liability on your balance sheet, but it's a liability on your balance sheet. So what we would be doing, we would be replacing that liability to CalPERS, which is at a 7% rate, with a pension obligation bond at a lower rate. So you're on a balance sheet standpoint, no change. From a cash flow standpoint, you will be saving money. And if you approve the policy that we're going to be recommending, a significant portion of those savings will be set aside in a restricted account to deal with future UAL.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Councilwoman?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
Councilman Sanat, thank you. So, Ms. Young, maybe you should tell our people about this bond that, see, I got to phrase this question right, that there could be a super fund at the end of this thing. If we don't do 100%, we can do less than that. And I guess the other question or the other statement would be we're not the only city doing this bond issue thing, and maybe others would like to know what other cities are doing this.
Again, great questions. So number one, at the study session, we prepared a chart that said, why is a POB a bad thing? And then we said, why is a POB a good thing? And one of the major points, I think the first point was, if we prepay 100% of our UAL and we give it to CalPERS, it goes into their $350 billion fund, and all of a sudden they start performing above 7%. Our UAL, which we prepaid 3-4 years from now, actually could drop. And we now are, as you said, super funded. We have more money in the system than we need. If we had not prepaid, they would have come back, they would have adjusted our UAL down, and they would have changed our amortization payment. The likelihood of that happening, probably de minimis, but also the savings that you're realizing immediately from refinancing your mortgage is significant. But also, as a part of a UAL policy, the fifth point in the slide that I presented was do not, as a council, give any benefits, additional benefits, until your pension obligation bonds are paid off. So even if you ended up in a super funded status, if you adopt that policy recommendation, as long as your pension obligation bonds are outstanding, as a policy, you said we will not give additional benefits. So you've protected yourself from a super funded status of giving additional benefits. You haven't protected yourself from having CalPERS come back and reduce your amortization of your UAL, but you refunded your UAL, so you're actually having savings at the same time. So it's an issue of, do you believe CalPERS in the next 3-4 years is going to exceed the 7% return? Probably not. And I think by the time we get through the judicial validation process, I think your UAL probably will be higher than where it is today and the maximum amount of bonds that are being approved tonight. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. And what other cities are using you? If I can ask.
Yeah, we provided a list in the last study session. There's been over $2.5 billion sold this year. I can tell you that in the South Bay, El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, and Torrance are in the process of study sessions and reviewing the process of issuing POBs.
Thank you.
I just want to add that the city of Pasadena issued $131 million in POB in the county of Riverside. Just an example would be like $720 million in POB. So those are some of the things, some of the cities and county that have issued POBs lately. This is as late as April 22nd, 2020. And I also want to add that the Councilmember Francis's question as far as this is a long-term situation, the answer to that is yes. 2 years ago, you approved the prepayment of a fresh restart with CalPERS. That really set the ball rolling. At that time, when I was the Director of Admin Services, we thought that we would prepay some of our safety components as far as the long-term basis. And then we were just really waiting for the right time, and the right time really is when interest rates drop at historical levels, which we are right now. So now is a great time to do this, simply because the yield spread between what we can get the bonds for, which is about 3.5% versus the 7%, is so big that we can't really just ignore it anymore. So this is a long term coming. It's not entirely due to the COVID pandemic. This is really due to our worry and our doing our financial planning as far as how can CalPERS really negatively impact us should the discount rate get lower than 7%. And by the way, the comment of Councilmember Francis as far as the article on CalPERS moving into private equity funds and calling it, the 7% solution does have reference to the 7% discount rate. You can clearly tell that they're not comfortable as far as the prognosis, if you will, of their earnings without getting into different types of investments such as private equity. They feel, and I can see that they feel that if they stay the course, that they will not be able to continue seeing 7% returns. It will be likely much lower than that. That's why they're diversifying into other areas, such as private equity.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, just one final comment I have. You know, once again, I feel like we're going in a good direction financially here. You know, I hate to use the term, sometimes you're taking a chance, but based on what we've learned from our study session, all the information that's been given to us, I think it's a good, prudent financial move that we're going, direction that we're going in right now. We're doing the best with the information that we have here, and I think it's a smart move. So with that, I'm going to ask, does any member of the council like to make a motion to adopt?
Madam Mayor, excuse me. We have a member of the public that would like to speak on this item.
Oh, okay, sure. Go ahead.
Good evening again. I have a couple of questions that I would like to answer to. I understand that we're doing this and we're hoping for the best, but we're preparing for the worst. I would like to know, as a resident, what is the worst case scenario if these bonds don't sell? I'm sure that all of this information that was given, and I was on that call when he did the presentation, is all pre-COVID. What happens? What's the worst case scenario if these bonds don't sell? And does it have a financial impact on the residents? Councilwoman Francis asked that question. I listened to the presenter's answer, but it wasn't a direct, clear answer, like yes or no, or what the physical financial impact would be on the residents, if there is any, if these bonds don't move. As a concerned resident, I would love to know that information.
Mr. City Manager, would you or Mark, either one of you like to answer that question again?
Mark, would you like to address that question as far as what happens to us if the bonds don't sell, and has that ever happened if the bonds don't sell? I think you've answered that question earlier, but you know, if we can clarify that, you know, is there any financial implications to us as far as if this doesn't go through with regard to not being able to sell the bonds?
Great question, and we enjoy those questions. Well, number one, you guys have a very good credit rating, and the steps that you're taking during the pandemic, and particularly the step you took before this, was very smart to set the city up to deal with the short-term issues. In terms of long-term, I have no question or issues that the city is going to maintain its long-term credit rating, which is A+, which is very, very good credit rating. I will say in the middle of March, when the pandemic first hit, the municipal market took about a 3-week hiatus where you basically couldn't sell bonds at any price. There was so much uncertainty. What does this mean? Hotels are going to stop. Card clubs are going to stop. People can't go to school. I mean, there was so much kind of panic that the municipal market just stopped. So could that happen again? You know, something completely out of the city's control when you're ready to sell bonds? Yes. I don't think it's realistic. It was about a 3-week period and everybody kind of got their senses around themselves. That was the same time where the stock market dropped 25%, and we're back now relative to highs. So things outside of the city's control, we'll watch it. But based on decisions you're making, where the city is, where your credit rating is, I don't see an issue of being able to sell bonds in the market. All of our clients have been going out and selling bonds. They've been starting out at rates with an expectation. And frankly, for the last 2 or 3 months, when they've been going out in the market, they've actually done better. There's been more demand than supply for the bonds. So interest rates have come down for our clients. So all other things being equal, I would expect that to be the same for the city of Gardena. You guys have made really good decisions in terms of your budget going forward. You've got great demographics, and I think there's going to be a lot of demand for the bonds. So I'm not concerned about going out and having nobody decide that they want Gardena bonds. We will hire a group of underwriters who, this is what they do 24/7. They sell bonds, they establish interest rates. We're going to find a couple firms to do this. They'll establish rates, they'll get the demand, and they'll get the bond sold. I'm very, very confident, and I'm not concerned at all about a situation in the current market, whether or not the bonds can or can't be sold.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. If not, is there a motion to adopt resolution number 6474 and authorize the city manager and the chief fiscal officer to take all administrative and budgetary actions necessary?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Councilmember Tanaka and a second by Councilmember Cascani. Will you call the roll?
Councilmember Tanaka,
Yes.
Councilmember Cascanian,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Francis,
Yes.
Mayor Serta.
Yes. Okay. All right. Next, moving on to council items, directives, and remarks. First item up, any council directives? Does any member of the council have any directives for the city manager?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it's Mayor Pro Tem Henderson. Mr. City Manager, now that we've completed our GPD listening tours, it'd be great for us to kind of get his summary report as we start working on our next steps and actions to make sure our GPD goes from a warrior status to guardian status of our community. And I just threw that in there. He didn't have to say that, but I just wanted to see what the report's going to be and the things we're going to do moving forward and everything. See if we need to expand cap cops or what we need to do. So that's all. Is there a second? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, was there a second?
Tanaka.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other more directives?
I do, Madam Mayor, Councilman Tanaka.
Go ahead.
Along with Mayor Pro Tem Henderson's talking tour of the police department, there was a topic that was brought up about a piece of equipment that I would like the city manager and the chief of police to get together to find out the feasibility of putting this piece of equipment into operation. So it's a simulator. I know the simulator is not cheap, but if there's some way that we can look at how we would purchase that or how we would engage with other police departments, especially within the South Bay, I'd like to see the feasibility of purchasing that simulator.
And I'll second that.
Okay, are there any more directives?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
To help in the process of revitalizing our businesses, I was wondering if our Spencer Dela Cruz, our economic person, could look into putting together some information for our businesses regarding some of the how to become more active in social media. Case in point, one of my favorite hamburger places, I'm a fan of Groupon, and they had a Groupon coupon for this hamburger place I really like to go to. And I don't recall seeing, we have 250 cultural restaurants here in the city of Gardena, and I was wondering if they could participate in something like that. Maybe they don't know how to get involved in some of the social media, or even participate in something like a Groupon. Maybe we could put together a package to help them go with it. For example, there's a place, Mr. Fry's over on Western. There's a line outside their door every day, and I was asking my niece, "How did you find out about it?" She said it was on Instagram. So, because it was on Instagram. And I don't know if our businesses, they're mostly mom and pop organizations. If we could put together information to help them in that regard, that might help revitalize them. And,
That's a good idea.
I'll
Is there a
second.
second?
I'll
Just a
second.
second. Okay, that was Henderson?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not getting the full visual screen here, so I have to listen for it.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Yeah, it was me.
Okay, thank you. All right, so second, are there any other directives? Okay, I have a directive. Because of this past 4th of July, it was pretty incredible, some of the illegal fireworks that we had going on. And this year, I think I got more complaints than ever. If it wasn't somebody stopping me on the street, it was the tons and tons of emails. Madam Mayor, what can you do to help with these illegal fireworks? What we're seeing, people were sending videos and pictures of neighbors and so on. And I know it's pretty hard when you call the police, the officers actually have to arrive there. They have to see a person lighting off the illegal fireworks. So what I'm looking to do, or what I'd like to see, is if the city could put together a fireworks ordinance where there would be an administrative citations, because I think we can do a little bit more with that. And it'll give us a little bit more teeth right now. It's a lot more wiggle room than currently where we're at right now with on just the criminal side, as far as the PD trying to issue it. And I think it's just a limit of $1,000. A lot more flexibility on that side. It's got to be something that we can help our community, because it's not fair as we lead up to the 4th of July, on the 4th of July and the day after, that our residents just don't have that peace of mind. I mean, when you have people who say they actually want to leave the city on the 4th of July, that's really sad, and I think maybe doing something like this can kind of help as we prepare for next year, because we can't forget how bad it was. So hopefully I can get a second on that.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Councilman Tanaka, I'll second that if we can add into that inquiry about my question of using drones to help combat that issue.
Okay. Okay, like that. Thank you. Okay, so I have a second on that. Are there any other directives? No? Okay, let's move on to city manager remarks regarding our previous directives.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, I have only 2 memos for you this time. The first one is a memo regarding the firework fees that the city collected from the firework stands this year. So we have that for you. And then the other one is a memo regarding the new Memorial Hospital of Gardena Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Kevin Metcalf. Mr. Metcalf was gracious to speak to our staff about GMH's response to COVID-19 and how they have managed to maintain all functions and services during this critical time. And I'm just going to read this memo. There's only a few bullet points. So Mr. Metcalf informed the city the following, that compared to all South Bay cities, Gardena continues to have one of the highest infection rates per capita. In late March and early April, Gardena faced its initial surge in positive COVID-19 cases, and that largely affected skilled nursing facilities and assisted living centers, causing very high mortality rate among seniors. During that time, GMH almost encountered a shortage in respirators. 3 other hospitals within the Avanti network were able to shift equipment around to assist GMH in their response. The second surge in COVID-19 cases began a week ago among a younger demographic. The individuals affected are between the ages of 45 to 60. Although the second surge of cases do not require as many respirators as the initial surge, the disease still proves to be very aggressive and requires hospitalization. As of today, 27 individuals are still being treated for COVID-19 at the facility. I just want to share my screen just briefly here to give my report on coronavirus update. We saw this the last, can everybody see the screen with the COVID-19? So you saw this last meeting. I just wanted to give an update on how basically our case count, our death count, and our South Bay rank is. So the previous update that we had, our cases was at 646. That's up now to 808. That's a difference of 162 cases. And the death count updated is 34. It was previously 33, so it was a difference of one death count. The South Bay ranking is still the same, a third. And then your infection rate, obviously, as the case count goes up, the infection rate goes up. We're at 1.35%, meaning that 1.35% of our population has been infected with COVID-19. And then lastly, again, this is just a graph of the blue dots representing the trend line. And then these are your daily update, daily updates on the number of cases. You can see we are still trending higher, and it's going up, very consistent with how the county is doing and how the state in general is doing. Okay, stop that. And then we have, just want to give you a quick announcement here. On July 22nd, the City of Gardena partnered with the charitable funds benefiting Gardena and hosted a food giveaway for Gardena residents. Over 150 families were provided food and resources. Charitable funds benefiting Gardena is a nonprofit designed to provide supplemental resources directly to the City of Gardena, programs, and community organizations. The next big event is the Back to School Safety Sack giveaway. Make sure to sign up through the city's new recreation online platform. I believe we have a short video from Rec and Human Services.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that great video. And lastly, I just want to give a shout out and a happy birthday to Stephanie Santin, Director of Rec and Human Services. Her birthday is actually today, so happy birthday, Director Santin. And also wanted to greet Mayor Serta, Vance, happy birthday on August 2nd. Happy birthday, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that ends my report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next up are council remarks. We're going to begin tonight with Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Real brief, I attended an event sponsored by Assemblyman Al Marisucci. It was titled Being a Black Leader in the South Bay, so it was a pretty interesting event to kind of listen and share. I also got some feedback from the Gardena listening tour, so that's moving positive for District 3. I attended my legislative committee for the Southern California area of government, so stay tuned for that for the some of the legislation we're trying to put forward. And Madam Mayor, I know you're busy, but I want to please, if you could, in your closing, as we adjourn, recognize our Congresswoman and civil rights icon John Lewis. We want to make sure that we recognize him, as well as let's pray for the Robert Garcia family. He's the mayor of the city of Long Beach. His mother just passed with complications from COVID-19. Her name is Gabriella O'Donnell. So he's our colleague. We want to make sure that we keep his family in prayer. The mayor, so ends my report.
I'm sorry, all three names you'd like to add, correct?
No, it's just Congressman John Lewis and Gabriella O'Donnell, who is the mother of Mayor Robert Garcia in Long Beach. So just two names.
Got it. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, next up is Councilmember Francis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since we last met, I attended the South Bay Council of Governments legislative briefing and also one for senior services. I also attended all three listening tours. It was very interesting. One thing for sure, we have a diversity of concerns as well as compliments for our Guardian Police Department. I met with Nikki Sweeney and Winnie Callejo and Sharon Williams, they're the equity coordinators for LAUSD, to discuss the possibility of establishing a school-city partnership with LAUSD. And you'll hear me say more about that later on. And I also attended the South Bay Council of Governments directors meeting. And I also want to make mention, I don't know if you can see this, but most of you should have received in the mail. It says attention voters, and it's from the LA County Register of Voters. And what it does, it actually is this the correct address. If yes, you don't have to do anything, no action is needed. But if no, make sure your address is correct on this, because we're all voting by mail. I like to call it voting at home. And make sure you check it. Also, make sure you go to lavote.net to check your status. Make sure you are registered to vote. And if you're not registered to vote, please do so. Voting is one of our most precious privileges. And as a matter of fact, my grandmother had to pay a poll tax in order to vote. So voting is very important. And in the words of the late civil rights icon, Congressman John R. Lewis, vote like you never have voted before. We got to make sure that we vote. It's our privilege. Many people gave up their lives, were beaten just for our right to vote. So,
I'm sorry, the volume went out. Were you still talking?
I'm sorry, I said make sure that everyone goes out to vote.
Okay.
And you'll be hearing, I think it's a big concern, right? So you'll be hearing more. Every council meeting, you're going to hear something about voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Cascania. Councilmember Cascania, I don't know if you're muted or not.
Mute.
There we go. Here you go. All right, Madam Mayor, actually, I don't have a report for today, but I just want to give my condolences as well. Actually, if you can relay my condolences to Tony Dixon, passing of his uncle, John Lewis. And he's, as Councilwoman Francis said, he was an iconic person, and it's a loss for everybody. So my condolences to everyone, and if you can relay to Tony as well, too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that it? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, my volume's going in and out a little bit here. For myself, just a couple of quick things to report. The first thing was here. I mentioned it before, and you can't see the flyer here, but I just want to make sure our business owners know about it. But through the Los Angeles County Sanitation District, they have a wastewater fee rebate. And for those businesses that were impacted by COVID-19, they may qualify for this rebate. This information has been passed on to our Economic Development Director. I believe he's either emailed this information out, but if he hasn't, you can call our City Hall and ask about the rebate information, and they can refer this over refer you over to Los Angeles County Sanitation District. Any little thing we can do to help our businesses out. Some of our businesses, if they're either closed or their businesses were cut back, you're probably using less water. So definitely seek this out because it's something that could possibly help you out. So since the last council meeting, I had my monthly CCGA meeting that deals with the board that I sit on for our casinos. I also attended, this is by Zoom. I also attended by Zoom my monthly sanitation meeting. I also attended by Zoom our finance meeting, and I'm going to go quickly because it's getting a little late. And then the following day, I attended by Zoom our sanitation district's orientation meeting. Now, I've actually attended this before because I've been on the sanitation board for a couple of years now, but I always think it's good to have a quick refresher course as far as what our sanitation board does. So it was a great couple of hours of information as far as what our sanitation department does, how it affects our businesses and our residents on a daily basis. Also, I'd like to just give a special shout out to Miss Stephanie Santine. I know we said happy birthday to her, but from me to you, great person to work with. So just special happy birthday to you. I want to keep reiterating to our residents to please continue wearing your mask. Please continue to do social distancing. Every time I hear these numbers go up, every council meeting, this is one of the main things I always want to hear. Where are we at with our numbers? And as we watch these numbers go up, we look at the number of deaths that have happened, not just in Gardena, but in the entire South Bay area, California. We have to keep remembering social distance and wear your mask. It can make a difference of saving your lives. Tonight, I'm going to add to the adjournment two people, two icons we lost in the past couple of weeks that were just amazing people. One name I'm going to add is C.T. Vivian to our adjournment tonight, and also I'm going to be adding the name of Congressman John R. Lewis from Atlanta, Georgia. And that ends my report, and next up is Councilmember Tanaka.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since our last, I attended the South Bay COGS board meeting. They had the BizFed Employer Group General Manager, Mark Wilbur, gave a talk about how businesses are doing, and it's kind of bleak, but he's willing to talk to any group, so I have a phone number if the city manager wants it. I attended the District 3 Chiefs talking tour, and I think that tour went along very well. Thanks to Mayor Pro Tem Henderson for suggesting that. It was probably one of the best things that came out from our police department, and there were a lot of good topics and conversation. Attended Officer Sergeant Ryan Jucket's retirement get-together on almost 41 years of service with our city. And let's see. My condolences to Tony on his uncle's death, and it was a great tribute. I watched the whole thing. It was just a great tribute to Congressman Lewis on everything that they did for him. So send him my best. And I just want to end by saying thank you to our city manager and his staff for being a great forward thinker in finances. You're holding us together. You're giving us hope. And there's a lot of great things that you guys are doing for us right now in this financial difficulty. And I think, Madam Mayor, that ends my report.
Okay, thank you. I want to just add this to my report, if our city clerk can just make note of this. I forgot to mention during mine, I attended the third listening tour that was had, and I just want to give kudos to those who were in charge of that. You guys did a really great job with that. They were just so open to all the questions, and just giving everybody the time to, whatever question you had, just, we're here, if there was anything else anybody wanted to ask, and just being available, the chief, the district lieutenant, you guys, like I said, did an amazing job. I know it was 3 Saturdays in a row, but I think it was definitely something, the community really appreciated hearing from, our police department. And this isn't anything new. This is something that we've been doing for so many years now. We first came up with district policing. And I love the fact that all of our council members are so involved in it, and you guys just know what it's about, and we'd love to spread the word of it. So we just kind of extended a little bit more of what we've done in the past, what we used to do in person. We now did it a little differently. We did it through Zoom. So again, just want to thank Chief Safel and your entire staff for putting that together. You guys did an amazing job. And thank you to all my colleagues who listened in too. That way we're all informed and we know exactly what was said. So with that, I just want to thank you guys as well too. And I think that's all of our reports. Okay, so next I'm going to move on. I believe all the announcements were made by our city manager. Mr. City Manager, was there any other announcement again that you want to reiterate or anything before I move on to adjournments?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so our remembrances tonight. Tonight we're going to adjourn in memory of Mrs. Shirley A. Glaspie, who was 71 years of age. She was the beloved sister of G-Trans Transportation Operations Supervisor Eunice Jones. Also tonight we're going to adjourn in memory of the mother of the mayor of the city of Long Beach, Robert Garcia. We're going to adjourn in memory of Gabriella O'Donnell. Also tonight, we're going to adjourn in memory of Mr. C.T. Vivian, who was a close friend of Martin Luther King as well as a lieutenant to the late, great Martin Luther King. We're also going to adjourn. My apology, my notes are kind of all over the place here. We're also going to adjourn in memory of Congressman John Lewis of Atlanta, Georgia, who was 80 years of age. He was a civil rights icon who served in Congress for over 30 years, and he was also a friend of mine. And I'm here right now actually in Atlanta, Georgia, attending all of the services. I'm sorry, I'm actually in DC at the moment. Here we go. And attending the services just an amazing person. And just know that in DC here, we're representing Gardena, and I actually saw the Congresswoman here, and she was very happy to know that Gardena was here in support of Congressman John Lewis. So at this time, the Gardena City Council will adjourn to our closed session portion of the City Council meeting, which will be at 7 p.m. and followed by a regular City Council meeting at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, August 11, 2020. We are adjourned.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Be safe.
Good night, everyone.
Wear a mask.